No reasonable person would look at images like this and have the first thought come to their mind be, oh, poor building maintenance. I guess some water must have been seeping into the basement. Perhaps there was a problem with the swimming pool. That must have caused this. No reasonable person would think this, but that is the story, that is the narrative they are trying to run out. No one is looking at this, at least no one in the mainstream media, of course, is looking at this with a critical eye. They're only looking at it with a political eye, and they are trying to bend themselves into pretzels in some vain, futile attempt to lay this at the feet of Governor DeSantis in Florida. When this is clearly, even if it were what they were alleging, which it's not, a local issue, a city issue, a county issue. Now, the real story is something, of course, I can only tell at Patreon. I have it set to the lowest possible access level they will allow me. $1 a month, even less if you sign up for an entire year. We've put 4 videos up there in the last week covering this. And I'll have another one up either today or tomorrow that delineates the real story behind what happened in Surfside. Now, in today's video, however, I'm going to share with you some pictures that many of you may have not seen. They're very rare photos. They're very high-resolution photos. And they reveal the story. They show how this narrative being pushed by the mainstream media can't possibly be true to anyone with a reasonable mind, anyone who understands construction, or even logic for that matter. But once again, patreon.com/Florida Maquis, just like it sounds. If you want to get read in on what's really going on behind the scenes, would love to have you there. Hundreds and hundreds of people have shown up in the last week, and those who have seen what we have shown have been in virtual unanimity in agreement that, yes, that is exactly what happened. Now, there is some hope. Apparently, last night, there were some tunnels and voids that were discovered, leaving hope still burning bright in the hearts of those attempting to recover anyone alive. It's been a week. The chances are very slim, but there is some hope. So keep these folks in your thoughts and prayers, regardless of the causes or the reasons. That should be paramount. This is the smoking gun right here. To defeat their narrative, all you have to do is read in detail their own reporting. Quote, this is 26 June, 2 days after this. Major structural flaws identified years before collapse, but condo oversight is slim. You see, this is what they're trying to do. Now, I'm sure many of you have seen these pictures. It shows a ceiling. It looks like it's got some leakage and perhaps some cracks. Hairline cracking at underside of floor slab and garage. This is 2018. Now remember, this is 3 years ago. But here is what they actually said. Up and down the east coast of Florida, on the east-facing sides of the buildings, the conditions shown in this report exist, not just in this building. Not just in this building. So the question would be, are all of the buildings in Surfside and all of the east-facing buildings in all of Florida at risk? No, of course not. Do you think a structural engineer, any structural engineer, anybody doing any kind of inspection, if they saw something that they believed could cause a building collapse, don't you think they would delineate that? That they would put it in giant red letters? If not repaired in X time, this could lead to an entire collapse of the building. Now, just for reference. This is Champlain Tower South here. This condo tower here has already been built. They're talking about how the noise of construction from building this tower was causing vibrations over here. That's normal. And that has been the case with every one of these buildings having been built. They're trying to make this generalized statement, and they don't have an answer for anyone saying, hey, well, what about the rest of the buildings in Florida? Now, as promised, more evidence debunking their story. All of the structural flaw reports refer to this pool slab, this concrete slab underneath the pool. Here's the pool. See the collapse over here? See this right here? The pool is still holding water. There's reports, oh, I saw the pool drain out, and I saw the parking garage collapse first. Here's the collapse. Here's the pool right here. Still has water in it. Still uncracked. Almost without the debris. Almost looks like you could almost swim in it. Parking garage right here. Here's the entrance underneath the parking garage. Over here to the lower right where I'm circling. That part of the building still standing. Parking garage under here still standing. So all those reports don't have anything to do with the part of the building that went down. Now here's another image. Look up here right at the edge. If there was some major structural flaw with this building, you see these heavy, super heavy air conditioning units up here? Let's see if we can get closer. Why would these not have all just completely collapsed with it? How could one section come down catastrophically, one or two, and then the rest of it be perfectly fine? That isn't how what they're describing works. If the foundation was compromised to the extent that it could cause a collapse, it wouldn't have caused just the one section to shear off. It wouldn't have caused this type. This part of the building would be leaning. It would have fallen over. It would be in the process of falling over. You can even see the wall here where it meets the top floor. This concrete looks fine. There's a crack. There's some cracks that came from this falling down, but generally speaking, it looks intact. What's left looks intact. It isn't adding up. It is not adding up. The story that they are trying to run out is just completely divorced from logic. There are tens of thousands of buildings east facing toward the Atlantic and the Gulf. There's winds that come off the Gulf and hit that side too. There's winds that hit the Panhandle. And salt. And like they said in the report, this is something that is these pictures. And he reinforces the story here. Nothing in the consultant's letter to the condo gives the air of imminent danger. Why would they not have said that? If you don't, to cover their own ass. If there was any chance, any of these inspectors, if they would have thought that there was some possibility that there could be some catastrophic collapse of the building, if repairs weren't done, just as a CYA, they would have said so. That's why they can't find it. That's why they're try to rely on headlines like Major structural flaw identified years before collapse, but condo oversight is slim. This is the way they try to bend themselves into pretzels to make you believe a story that isn't true, that literally is the exact opposite of what you're seeing with your own eyes. Look at the reports. They talk about the pool. Literally in pictures taken the next morning, the pool is fine. They talk about the cracking and spalling in columns underneath the parking garage. The parking garage, entrance to exit, is fine. That part of the building is okay. So that would be this section of the concrete and this section of the concrete. It's just bizarre. It truly is bizarre how they can just not have any sense of logic and say, hey, wait a minute. Hold on, guys. This doesn't make sense. We've watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of implosions. They're all over YouTube. We've seen buildings collapse down into their own footprint before. We know that it takes very specific techniques, standards, and equipment to do this. Buildings just don't do this by themselves. And I'll say it again, especially in Florida, buildings built out here, the standards are some of the highest in the world. Gale force winds, 100 miles an hour plus, have slammed into these buildings over the decades, bringing sand blasting. With that kind of wind power, if there were any problem, it would cut these buildings down like they're not even there. Ask anybody who's run a sand blaster. If you take sand and you mix it with salt water and then you blast it at concrete at 100 miles an hour, which has happened to these buildings multiple times since 1981 when this building was built. It's an incredibly destructive force. That's why the standards are so high. Buildings like this don't just collapse. And I guess I'll just have to leave it there. But once again, thank you to everyone who's joined me over at Patreon for the real story, for what really happened. And if you would like to get read in on that, we'd love to have you. God bless. Have a great week. Like, share, subscribe. And of course, pray for the families. Pray for the first responders. Pray for those who've lost loved ones. That's paramount. But like, share, subscribe. We'll see you, of course, tonight on Twitch.